Welcome to Recovery Works Excel 2 Charts, Setting Up and Printing a Page, and Styles. To begin, open Microsoft Excel 2010, and if you'll be using a flash drive, insert it into your computer now. We'll begin by creating a chart. Excel allows you to easily create professional-looking charts. Once you've created the chart, you can format it in many different ways. To begin, let's enter the data that we will use in our chart. This will give us a chance to review the concepts we learned in Excel 1. Go ahead and click in cell A1. My worksheet is zoomed to 150% so you can clearly see what I'm keying. You most likely can keep your worksheet at 100%. To begin, let's type the title of Sales Report, and then go ahead and move to cell B2. Type the abbreviation for January, JAN. Let's use the autofill technique that we learned in Excel 1 to create the autofill sequence of January, February, and March. Remember to do that, move to the autofill handle. You'll know you're in the correct place when your cursor displays as a black plus sign, and drag that over C and D, and you have now used autofill to copy the sequence of months. We'll type total in this cell, and then let's go ahead and enter data for salespeople. This row will be for John, and we'll go ahead and enter his data. Note that we will not enter a total. We'll use the auto sum button to total the rows and columns. So we'll move down to A4 and key in the next salesperson's data. And we'll do one more salesperson and enter his data. And finally, in cell A6, enter total, and then move to cell B6. Let's go ahead and total the column using the auto sum button. Go ahead and move your mouse, click on auto sum, press enter, and use autofill to copy that formula. Remember, to use autofill, you must move to the autofill handle, and the black plus sign needs to be displayed. And then you can copy that. And then let's go ahead to cell E3, and let's use the auto sum to total the row. So we'll click auto sum, we'll press enter, click in cell E3, and then we'll go ahead and copy. Wonderful. Now to finish this, let's go ahead and merge and center the title. To complete that command, go ahead and click in A1 and then select from A1 through E1. That's the area that we want to center over. And make sure your Home tab is selected, and then in the alignment group, move your mouse and click on Merge and Center. And now Sales Report is centered, and you can go ahead and click on cell A7. Let's go ahead and save this data, and then we can go ahead and chart it. Take your mouse, move to the Save button. Let's go ahead and we'll call this Charting Data. And before we save, make sure you are saving to your flash drive if you have a flash drive. Now, I've already navigated to my flash drive. To navigate to a flash drive, you may need to scroll. You need to be able to view the computer section, and you should choose your flash drive, which is going to be displayed at the bottom. Yours may have a different letter than mine, but it will be displayed at the bottom of the computer section. If you don't have a flash drive, you can go ahead and save here to Documents. To complete the save process, go ahead and click on Save. Now let's learn how to change this data into a chart. Now you don't have to use all of the data. In our first chart, we're going to go ahead and create a chart using sales for all three salespeople for January and February only. So click in cell A2 and select through C5. So it's A2 through C5. To insert a chart, move to the Insert tab, move to Column and click. Go ahead and select that first choice, and you've now just created a 2D column. Now in a minute we'll talk about the different parts that display on the chart, but for now let's move the chart and let's resize the chart. And if you know how to move or resize in Excel or any other Office programs, you're going to use the same techniques. How do you resize? Well, when you want to resize, you always need to make sure that you resize using a handle and the double-headed arrow. So a handle can be found by moving your mouse to any corner, and you'll know that you are at the resize handle when your mouse displays, as mine is, as a double-headed arrow. Next, you're going to go ahead and press and hold down. Now your cursor will now change to a crosshair, and you can decide what size you want to make this, but make it smaller than it currently is, and you'll just drag that handle. And we use the right handle in that case. You could have used the left handle at the top or the bottom, or the right handle at the top or the bottom. Now, if you want to move your chart, a four-headed arrow needs to display. It's very important that you move into the top right area, and you'll know you're in the right place. You'll see a screen tip that displays chart area. That's how you want your mouse to be positioned. Notice if you move it a little further over and your screen tip changes to plot area, the plot area has the grid lines, and that's where the bars are plotted. You do not want to right now move that, because you would move the plot area, not the whole chart. So to move the whole chart, make sure you're here in this area, press and hold down, and you can move the chart area wherever you'd like. Make sure that you've resized and repositioned your chart so that you can see the data that we've entered, because we'll be using that as we continue to work through the course. Let's talk about the parts of the chart, and we can very easily identify what each part is because we'll see screen tips as we hover our mouse through the chart. Let's start over here. Now, this tells me that the January and February are both legend entries. So the legend indicates to me exactly what I'm plotting. So I can see that the bars that are blue are January and the red bars are February. Now, if I move down and if I hover over Steve, Mary, and John, I can see that this area is called the horizontal axis, and this is the categories that we have charted. Now, there's also a vertical axis, and as I move over the numbers on the left-hand side, it tells me this is the vertical axis, and these are the values. I can move over here, and I can see that this is displaying series. So this is the January series for John, and it will even display to me the exact value. So his value is 760. You'll also notice that you have a plot area, and that's where the grid lines display. This is a very basic chart. I want you to notice that up top you will see three tabs: Chart Tools, Design, Layout, and Format. You will be able to use those tabs in order to change the design, the layout, or the format of your chart, and we'll go ahead and learn about those. But first I wanted you to be able to identify the parts that you currently have displayed on your chart. So we are now working with a column chart. If you change your mind and you want to change your chart type, you can do that pretty easily. Right now your Design tab is selected, and the first button on the left is Change Chart Type. If you go ahead and click Change Chart Type, you are going to see the Chart Type dialog box that we saw at the beginning when we selected our chart type, and you'll remember that we chose column. Let's say that we had decided we wanted to display this information in a bar chart instead. So let's go ahead and click Bar, and you can now see the different types of bar charts displayed. Let's just go ahead and leave it selected at the first bar chart and then click OK. And we have the same information. Now it's displayed as a bar chart instead of a column chart. And as you work with charts over time, you will be able to use lots and lots of different types of charts if you so desired. Now let's go ahead and practice changing chart type again. So let's move over to the Change Chart Type button. Let's go to Column, and we'll just leave it at that first choice, and we'll click OK. And now we're back to where we started. Next, let's learn how to add, edit, or remove a chart data source. We're going to go ahead and we are going to add the month of March to our chart. When we began, we only selected January and February. So to do this, it's important that we can see all of our chart data. You can see right now that it shows me that it's plotting January and February. I can see that because there's a blue range selected there. We're going to go ahead and add March. So to do that, we're still in the Design tab. We're going to go ahead and move to the Select Data button. And you can see that this shows me the series, which now is January and February, and it also shows me my categories, John, Mary, and Steve. We're going to go ahead and add the series March. Now, as you're working with the Select Data Source dialog box, you can move it. So see how you can take the arrow and you can move this around if you need to, and you may need to in order to see the data. Let's go ahead and add March to our Legend Entries series. Go ahead and point to the Add button and click. Series name needs to be March. Instead of typing that, take your mouse, move it over to your data, click on cell D2, and notice that this displays, we are currently in sheet 1. I can see that that's active, and I am in cell D2. And you may remember from Excel 1, the dollar signs are displayed to show that this is an absolute reference. What that means is it will always plot at that specific cell, cell D2. Now, we also need to include John, Mary, and Steve's values for March. So we need to change what displays in series values. I want you to go ahead and click in series value, and I'd like you to remove the 1 in brackets, but leave the equal sign. Use your backspace key and make sure the only symbol that displays in series values is an equal sign. Next, select the series values for March, start on D3, and go ahead and select down to D5. Your dialog box should look like mine. Now, you can look inside the text boxes for series names and series values. You can also look over here to the side. This will show you the text and the data that you selected. So it should look like mine. And once it does, you'll click OK. And now you can see that March has been added to the series. Let's click OK. And now we can see that that has changed the display of our chart. Now, what if you wanted to swap labels in the legend with the horizontal axis? You can do that quite easily with the Switch Row Column button. So we've already discussed that our months are over here in the legend on the right-hand side. Let's change that display by moving our mouse to the Switch Row Column button and clicking. And you can now see that we have switched that. So now if we move over here to our legend, we can see that John, Mary, and Steve display as our legend. And if we come down here, we can see that January and February and March are going to be in our horizontal axis. Now let's go ahead and switch that back again. To do that, let's move back to the Switch Row Column button, and let's go ahead and click. When you've created a chart, you may decide that you want it to display on its own worksheet. If you want to move a chart to its own worksheet, continue in the Chart Tools Design tab, but move all the way over to the right to the last button. Click Move Chart, and to move it to a new sheet, go ahead and click on New Sheet. Now notice that it will put it in a new sheet called Chart 1, but you can rename that if you want to. So let's go ahead and type Sales Chart. And by doing that, the name of our tab will be Sales Chart. Next, we'll click OK. Now, I want you to notice the chart is now in its own tab, and that tab is called Sales Chart. Now that we've moved it to its own sheet, let's go ahead and learn how to modify a chart. To modify a chart, you'll work in the Layout tab. Go ahead and take your mouse and click on Layout. In the Layout tab, we are going to go ahead and focus on changing labels. Notice in labels, you can change the chart title, axis titles, legend, data labels, and then data table. If you want a chart title, go ahead and click Chart Title. Notice that currently no chart title displays, so it reads none. Let's change it to Above Chart, and now you have a chart title. You could select the chart title, and then you could type new text in there. So let's go ahead and type Sales Report. Next, you could add access titles by clicking on the arrow for access titles, and notice you have two selections: primary horizontal access title, primary vertical access title. Let's go ahead and label the primary vertical access title. So we'll click on that, and then we'll go ahead and choose rotated title. Now the text is rotated, it's very tiny. To type in that, you may have to increase your zoom. And then I'm going to increase mine a little bit more. And then you can go ahead and select it. And even though it's rotated, we'll select it just like we would choose normal text. And so we could just put units of sale, for example. Now let's go ahead and add access title primary horizontal. And then we'll scroll down here. We could select that, and we could put salespeople. Now remember, all of these items that we're adding, they're optional. Put them in if they help clarify your data, but you don't have to put them in. I'm going to go ahead and return to 100%. And if I scroll, I can see that information that I've added. Now we already have a legend, but you might want to reposition the legend. So you have choices for the legend when you click the arrow. So let's say instead of it showing on the right, I wanted to show it at the bottom. That would be an example of your legend at the bottom. Now if I change my mind and I don't like that, I could always change it back. So I'm going to move it back to show legend at right. Now I would suggest that you add data labels or a data table to display precise values. For data labels, you're going to click the arrow, and you can position them in different positions in relation to the column. So let's go ahead and choose center. You can see that the data is displayed in the center. Now another option, besides data labels that gives you even more information, is a data table. Let's go ahead and turn those data labels off by clicking and choosing none. Let's go to Data Table and let's click Show Data Table, and then you'll have to scroll down to see that. Now you've added a data table, which gives you very specific information about exactly what you're plotting. So you can customize your chart any way that you want. Remember, we're using Chart Tools Layout tab, and we're using this Labels group. You also have an axis group that you could use. You can format the axis, and so if we click on that and we go to primary horizontal axis, you can see that it's currently showing it from left to right. You could show it from right to left if you wanted. We'll go back. Let's move it back to show left to right because that's more standard. We won't actually change that, or we won't keep that change, but I wanted to show you you could do that if you wanted. Now you also have grid lines. We have major grid lines. That has to do with the distance between the lines. If you want less distance between the lines, you could change it to minor, and you could add vertical grid lines too. So if you click grid lines, go to primary horizontal grid lines, let's click on minor grid lines and notice the difference in the spacing between the lines. And then let's try vertical grid lines. Let's click on grid lines, primary vertical grid lines, and let's click minor. And now you have the vertical grid lines displaying. Now let's talk briefly about the Format tab that comes with Chart Tools. So if you click Format and you want to change very specific formatting, this is the place to go. So let's say, for example, I don't like the green color for March. So for my series March. If I want to change the color, Chart Tools Format is where I want to do that. Now I want you to go ahead and click on Series March Point John, which is where my mouse is, and I want you to notice that when I click on that, I can see it selected. It has handles on it. Those little circles are handles, and I selected John's series for March, but I want you to notice when I chose that March series, it selected the series also for Mary and for Steve. Those are related to each other, so it chose all three of them. So if I wanted to change the formatting of it, for example, I want to change the fill, I could come right up here in the Shape Styles group. I could move to Shape Fill and click the drop down arrow, and then I could go ahead and change the color. Maybe I have decided I want orange instead of green, so I could just come right here and notice that it's changed for all three of those. And you could do the same thing for other series if you wanted to. So you can either click on series, remember we changed the March series, or you can use the drop-down box over here. You can click the drop-down arrow, and you could also select things in this manner. So if I wanted to choose the January series, I could click here. Notice that that chooses all of the January series. Or I could even choose the chart title. Now I'll have to scroll up to see that. Now that selected the chart title. So I could even change the formatting of that chart title. Let's say that I wanted to apply fill to the chart title. I'll do it in a gray. I have it selected, and then I went ahead and changed the formatting. So you've had the experience to create a chart and work with the design, the layout, and the format tabs. Let's go ahead and save this chart, and we'll call it My Sales Chart. To do that, because we've already saved this workbook as charting data, but we want to save a version of it with our chart, let's go ahead to File, Save As, and let's just call this My Sales Chart. And then we'll click Save. Let's go ahead and return to Sheet 1. Make sure that you can see all of your data, and let's go ahead and create another type of chart. We're going to go ahead and create a pie chart, and then we'll change the formatting of that pie chart. We are going to choose for the pie chart just the January data for John, Mary, and Steve. So let's go ahead, start at A2, and then go to B5. Next, go ahead and click the Insert tab. In the chart group, choose Pie, and let's go ahead and choose a 3D pie chart. And just like that, you have your 3D pie chart. Let's go ahead and change the formatting of that a little bit. To do that, let's go ahead and go to Chart Tools Layout. And because this is a 3D chart, let's change the values for 3D rotation. Go ahead and move your mouse pointer to the 3D rotation. Let's go ahead and change the X value to 90, the Y value to 50. And as you're doing this, if you want to see how it's changing your chart, you can move the dialog box. Now I'm giving you some preset values. If you were doing this on your own and you weren't sure what values you wanted to use, notice instead of keying in numbers, you can go ahead and use the arrows up or down, and you can see how that's changing your chart. Now I want you to put that back at 50, but I wanted you to see that if you aren't quite certain what values you need, you can tweak it or kind of eyeball it by using those arrows. Let's turn off auto scale, and let's change the depth value. So we'll change the depth to 400, and let's change the height to 300. And you can see the change to your chart when you do that. Now go ahead and click Close. And by using that Layout tab, you have altered that a little bit. Now sometimes people like to explode a wedge in their pie chart. And we can do that simply by pointing to the wedge that we want to explode and then moving it with our mouse. let's go ahead and explode the pie slice for John. So go ahead and when you click, make certain that you only have John's slice selected. So when you click, you may notice that all 3 slices are selected. If that's the case, go ahead and click back on just John's slice. And then press and hold down, just move that away from your chart. And I want you to notice as you're moving that, you get a dotted line. So you can go ahead and move it, and you can move it as far out or as near to the rest of the pie as you want. Okay, wonderful. Now let's go ahead and let's just save this as my pie chart. And before we do that, why don't we move it to another sheet, a sheet of its own? To do that, move to the Design tab. Go ahead and move your mouse to Move Chart. Click on New Sheet. And let's call this Pie Chart. And then click OK. Wonderful. And now you have Pie Chart on a Pie Chart tab. And so we have a version of this save that includes the pie chart. Let's do a file by clicking on the File tab and then Save As. And let's call this My Pie Sales Chart. All right, so we'll do My Pie Sales Chart and then click Save. Great, so now you've learned how to create 2 types of chart. Now let's do one more thing with our sales chart. So go ahead and click on Sales Report and change your view so you can see that pretty clearly. I'm going to go ahead and change my view to 70% so I can see the whole chart pretty clearly. All right, let me get that exactly how I want it. Okay, now I'm at 70%. You can actually combine chart types if you wanted to. So in this case, we are going to add, one of our series is actually going to display as a line chart. So in order to do that, I want you to go ahead and select the January data series. Now to do that, you can just click on the blue bar that represents your January data series. Remember, it's going to select that for John, Mary, and Steve. And then we are going to change the chart type, but because we only have the January series selected, it's only going to change it for January. So you should have your Design tab selected, click on Change Chart Type, and we're going to change just that series to line. So click on Line, and then I want you to look in the line choices and make sure you have Line with markers selected. Next, click OK. So now you're displaying just the January series as a line, and that's an example of creating a combination of chart types. So let's go ahead and save this one as My Combo Chart. So we'll go to File, Save As, and we'll call this My Combo Chart, and then we'll click Save. Wonderful. Enjoy working with charts. You can see that you have lots and lots of options with charts. You can create different types as well as creating a combination. So we are finished with this section of the class. So let's go ahead and close this file. To do that, go to the File tab and then click Close. And now you are in Excel, and we're going to create a new worksheet, and we're going to use that to talk about page setup and printing. Go ahead and click on your File tab and then click New and double click on Blank Workbook. And now we are ready to begin, and we are going to key some different data in this worksheet, and this will give us an example of how we can set up a page and then how we can print the page. Let's go ahead and continue to work with information about salespeople. So make sure cell A1 is selected. I'm going to change my zoom once again so you can see most clearly what I'm keying. You most likely can stay at 100% view. So we'll go ahead and type salesperson commission claim. And then in cell B2, type total sales. In cell A3, type the abbreviation for January, JAN, and let's use autofill to fill in January, February, March. So you want to move your mouse to the autofill handle, Drag that down, and then click on A7. This will be commission rate, and then A8 will be commission. Now, you do not need the word rate, you just need the word commission, so you can type commission and then press delete because you do not need rate to display, and then press enter. Let's go ahead and save this file. Let's go ahead and click on the save button, and we'll go ahead and call this commissions. And then you'll click save. So now that we have created a chart or some data, let's go ahead and talk about how we might want to change the page setup. We don't have a lot of data on this page, so we can imagine that this would most likely print on one page. Let's say that we wanted it to print on 2 pages. In that case, we would have to insert a page break. Now in this example, we just have a small worksheet. You'll find when you're working with Excel, maybe when you're working with longer worksheets, that it may be most useful for you to create page breaks. You may not like where the page is breaking, and by creating your own page breaks, you can control that. How can I determine how this is laid out on the page? Well, to do that, I can change my view. Now, we have been working, and I can see this if I move down towards my zoom button to the 3 buttons to the left of that. We've been working in normal view in both Excel 1 and Excel 2. If I'm interested in page setup and knowing exactly how my page is laid out, I can change my view to page layout. So let's go ahead and click on page layout. So I can see here that from page layout, I can clearly see that this is all going to fit on one page. And this is also the view where I could add a header if I wanted something to print on the top of every page. If I scroll down, I can see that I could add a footer. I could change margins in this view. But there's an even easier view if I decide I want to add a page break, and that's by coming over here to the next view button, and this is called Page Break Preview. Let's go ahead and we'll come back to this view, the page layout, but let's go to Page Break Preview right now. Now you're going to get this dialog box, Welcome to Page Break Preview. It says you can adjust where the page breaks are by clicking and dragging them with your mouse. That's a hint to you, so some people like that to appear every time they go into Page Break Preview. If you don't want that to appear every time, you could turn it off by putting a check and do not show this dialog again. But for now, I'm going to advise you not to check it and just click OK. Now we have a very tiny view, but we can see we have one page. You may want to change your view so that you can see this more clearly. I'm going to bring mine to 200%. All right, so I'm in Page Break Preview, and I can see that this is going to print on one page. Let's say that I wanted commission rate and commission to print on a second page. I could easily create a page break. So let me show you how to do that. You can follow with me. I would like the page to break at A6. So I'm going to go ahead and take my mouse and I'm going to move it to cell A6, and I'm going to use a shortcut menu. That's the fastest way to insert a page break. So I'm going to right click and I'm just going to come to Insert Page Break, and I'm going to left click on that. And now I've inserted a page break. So I can clearly see this is page 1, this is page 2. Now the blue line represents the break that I've just added between page 1 and page 2. You may be wondering, why is this yellow? Well, that is because A6 is our active cell. If you click on A7, I want you to notice that now it is a blue solid line, and that shows me that it is a page break. Now, that's how easy it is to insert a page break. Now, once you have the page break created, you can adjust it. You can entirely remove it, or you could just move it. So let's say that I want the page to actually break at A7. I can go ahead, and you can do this with me. I can simply take my mouse, move it to that page break. I'll get a double-headed arrow. I can press and hold down and move that. And now I've changed where the page breaks. Now row 6 is on page 1. Page 2 starts on row 7. Now if you completely change your mind and you completely want to remove the page break, that's pretty easy to do too. Move to the page break, get a double-headed arrow, just go ahead and drag it all the way down off the page. And now that returns you just to page 1. So those are the very easy steps to create a page break. Now let's go ahead and make some other changes to this document, and let's use Page Layout View to do that. So let's go ahead and take our mouse, move it down to Page Layout, and click. Right, so if you wanted to change the margins here in Page Layout View, you could do that. Now I want you to notice there is an arrow at the top. So if you wanted to adjust the right margin, you would come over to the right. You'll get a double-headed arrow. It shows me that currently the right margin is at 0.70 inches. I'd like to change that to 0.50. So let's press and hold down and move that to 0.50. There we go. That can be a little bit tricky. So that was our right margin. And then if we wanted to change our left margin, it's at 0.70 inches. Let's say we wanted to change that to 0.50. I'm just pressing and holding down and dragging. And that's how you can change your left and your right margin in a very visual way. There's other ways to change your margin, but this is an easy way to visually change that margin. Now let's make some other changes. Let's go ahead and add a header. So we want information to show up if we had more than one page on the top of each page. Go ahead and click on Click to Add Header, and let's just go ahead and put commissions as our header. And then you can go ahead and click outside of that, and let's find the header area. So let's move down, and let's find the footer area, I should say. Let's click on Click to Add Footer. Now I want you to notice that when we created our header, we simply typed in it. When you are creating a header or a footer, you can easily add elements to it or change the design of it with the Header and Footer Tools Design tab that shows up right up here. So if you go ahead and click on that, let's talk about some of the choices. You could easily add, if we look here at Header and Footer elements, a page number. How many number of pages? The date, the time, the file path. That basically means where your file is saved. So in our case, it's saved to a flash drive. The file name, the sheet name. You could even add a picture. For example, if you had a company logo. Now I want you to notice that when we click in the footer area, we're working in the center of the footer, but both the footer and the header are divided into 3 different areas. So here's the left area, the middle area, and the right area. So let's go ahead and click on the left area, and let's add a page number. We'll just come up and click, and there's a code inserted to add the page number. Let's click on the center. Let's go ahead and let's put the current date. There's the date. And then finally, let's come over to the right. Now you don't have to use the elements. So in this case, let's just go ahead and type your name. And then when you're finished, you're just going to go ahead and click in any cell. In fact, let's just go up and click on cell A1. Now I'm showing you the easiest way to work through these commands. For example, adding a header and footer. There are other places you can go to in Excel that you could create a header or footer. I like to show people as they're learning this how to do it here in this view. Now remember, we're here in this middle view, page layout, because it's very visual and it's very easy to remember. What are some other ways that we could change our page? Currently, our page orientation is portrait. Many times in Excel, you'll find that you will want to change the page orientation to landscape. That's very common. So to make that change, you're going to actually go to the Page Layout tab and work in the Page Setup group. Now notice here, you could change margins. We've already done that. Remember, we are in Page Layout view, and we were able to do that using the ruler. But we could have done it here, and we won't change them again, but if we click that drop-down arrow, you can see down towards the bottom, it shows that I've changed the margins. They are custom margins. But let's focus on orientation. Let's click on orientation. We're currently in portrait orientation. Let's change that to landscape. And you'll see a difference in the way your document displays. Notice if you ever needed to change the size of your document, you're currently at letter size, and we'll keep it there, but you could change it to legal size and other sizes if you wanted to. Okay, so that gives you a good idea about how you might change the way your page is laid out. Next, let's talk about printing. When you're ready to print your document, go ahead and click on the File tab and then click Print. You'll see a display of your document. Notice it tells you what page you're currently on and how many pages are in your document. So we're on page 1 of 1. If we had more than one page, we would see the number of pages displayed. Before you print your document, many of the settings that we've already talked about, such as page size, page orientation, margins, those are available here in this area under Settings. So some people choose, before they print, to go to File, Print, and change their settings here. And that's fine to do that. There's many different options, and you'll just develop your preferences for that. I also want you to notice that there are even more choices for page setup that are available to you right here. So for example, if you wanted to add grid lines, or if you wanted to center the document horizontally and vertically, you could do that with page setup. Let's explore that part of Excel. So click Page Setup. Once again, as I've said, there's many different places where you can find the same command. So for example, here, we can see that we've already changed this to landscape, but this would be a place that we could do that. Scaling is at 100%. If you are working with a document that you are trying to fit onto one page and it's not fitting for you, you can always try Fit to Pages command. We don't have a long enough document for that to work effectively for us, but keep that in mind. If you want it to fit onto one page or 2 pages or however many pages. So an example of that would be, I'd like my worksheet to fit on one page. It's actually fitting on one page and there's 2 lines down on page 2. Using Scale to Fit will actually change the settings so that it fits onto one page. Now, as a result of doing that, it is going to change the font size, and you do have to be careful that the font size does not become so small that you can't read it. But that is one option to try scaling if you're working with a longer document. Notice Page Setup has more than one tab. We're currently in Page. Let's click on Margins. Now here's another place that we can change margins. So we've already seen 3 places that we can change margins. And as you're working in Excel, you'll develop preferences for where you like to change margins the best. I do like to show people in this margins area, this is the place where you could go to center the page horizontally and vertically. Let's go ahead and do that. And that's pretty simple. You just go ahead and click on horizontally and then vertically. Now here's another place that we could set the header and the footer. And we've already done that when we were in the other view, but you could come here to do it. And then finally, there are some options under Sheet that may interest you. If you want to print with grid lines to make your sheet easier to read, you can click on Grid Lines. Notice here you could just print in black and white. You could use draft quality. And there's some other choices for you there. So let's go ahead and click OK, and we can see the changes to our sheet. We've centered it both horizontally and vertically, and we've added grid lines. So once you've gone through all of the ways to set up and you're actually ready to print, you may have a choice depending on the computer you're using. Right here in the printer area, you may be able to select different printers. I have a few choices here, and you may also. And you can also choose how many copies. So it's going to be set to 1, but if you needed more than 1, you could simply use the up arrow, or let's say I wanted 5 copies, I could simply type the number in there. And then to complete the process, and we won't print today, but you would, if you were going to print, you would click the print button. And if you are connected to a printer and you want to print today, you could do that. All right, so that gives you a great idea of how you can change the page setup and then how you can print your document. Let's go ahead and save this document. We are here at the print called the Backstage view, so you can go ahead and click on the Save button. let's close this file. To do that, click on the File tab and then click Close. And let's open our chart file. So let's go to the File tab. Now, in your recent workbooks, you should be able to see all of your charts. The last one we saved was my combo chart. So go ahead and click on that. And one other topic that I want to make sure you understand with printing is you could choose exactly what parts of your sheet you want, or your workbook you want to print. So for example, if you wanted to only print this worksheet, notice we have 5 worksheets in this workbook. We have sales chart, pie chart, sheet 1, sheet 2, and sheet 3. I have just the sales chart tab selected. So if I get ready to print, and let's try this, if I go to File, Print, notice that it says it's just going to print the active sheet. So if I clicked Print now, it would just print this sheet. If I wanted to print all of the workbook, I have some choices here. If I click down here, I could do Print Entire Workbook. And now it's going to go ahead, it's going to print the entire workbook, and I can use this arrow down here. It's called your next page arrow. I can see it would print the first chart, the second chart, and then the data on that first worksheet. Now there are 2 other worksheets. There's no data on those worksheets, so it will not print those worksheets. So when you get ready to print, you can decide whether you want to print just specific sheets in the workbook or whether you want to print the entire workbook. And once you have those settings just as you like them, you would simply go ahead and click Print. All right, let's go ahead and close that. So we'll go to the File tab and click Close. And now we're at a blank workbook. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about cell styles. So to do that, let's go ahead and create another worksheet. Click on the File tab and then click New. Double click on Blank Workbook. And we're just going to create a very basic months of the year chart. So let's go ahead and type months. This will be very simple. We'll go ahead and type January. Let me use my autofill handle and you do the same thing. And let's go ahead and let's move that down to we have all the months of the year, January through December. This is a very basic worksheet just to demonstrate cell style. So a cell style includes the font in the cell as well as any special formatting such as shading or an outline. Instead of applying formatting to each cell individually, you can use cell styles to quickly apply the cell styles. There are built-in cell styles. I'll show you how to use those first. But you can also customize cell styles. Let's go ahead and let's change the cell formatting of cell A1. So click in cell A1. Let me increase my zoom so you can see this a little better. To work with cell styles, you'll want to be in the Home tab and then in the Styles group. And you'll want to click here on the Cell Styles button. Now you have lots of choices for cell styles. You have good, bad, and neutral. You have date and model. And we're going to focus today on title and heading. So if months was a heading, I could apply a heading 1 style. Notice as I hover over, I could see the difference between heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4. Now let's just go ahead and select this as heading 1. Now that we've selected that, let's go ahead and apply styles for the first quarter. So let's select January, February, and March. Let's go back to Cell Styles. And because we used heading 1 and we want to use the same theme, notice as we move through, we can apply an accent in 20, 40, or 60, or we could apply accent 1. Let's go ahead and apply accent 1. Next, let's choose April, May, June. Let's go back to Cell Styles. And for this, let's go ahead, we'll just go up the list, we'll do 60%. Then we'll do July, August, September. Back to cell styles. Let's do 40%. And then finally, we'll do October, November, December. Go back to cell styles, and we'll do 20%. And then we'll click outside. So quite easily, we have been able to format our information. Okay. You can also create your own cell style. So let's say that we have decided that we want to create another cell. So we actually are going to add a row, and then we are going to type into that 2017 sales information. To insert the row, go ahead and select row 1 by moving to the number 1, and when the arrow that points to the right displays, you're going to go ahead and click. Next, right-click and choose Insert. And now you've inserted a new row. Click in cell A1, and let's go ahead and we'll put Sales Report 2017. I'm not sure if that's what I said we were going to do a minute ago, but that's what we were going to do. So Sales Report 2017, and then we'll press Enter to confirm that. Okay, so let's go ahead and format cell A1. Let's change the size. Let's change it to 14. Notice I'm working here in the font group. Let's go to the bucket icon, which stands for fill color, and let's click the drop down arrow, and let's go ahead and add a shade. Let's choose this shade. And even though this text is originating in A1, it flows to B1. So let's go ahead and do this by choosing A1 and B1. All right, so let's make sure they're both 14 points. And actually, when I make it 14 points, now it's extending to C. So let's go ahead and choose A1, B1, and C1, because we want everything to be formatted. Now let's go back to fill. Let's choose that color. It wasn't the color, was it? It must be this color. That's what we want. There we go. That's the color we want. And let's do one other thing. So A1, B1, C1. Let's go ahead and change the font color. So to do that, come here to your font color button. Let's make that font a lighter color. Okay, and then we'll click outside of it. Wonderful. So we've now created our own style. So we're going to name that, and then we can use that same style again. In this case, let's highlight A1, B1, C1. Let's go back to Cell Styles. Let's come way down to the bottom and click New Cell Style. Now let's give this a name. So we're going to call this our Sales Report style, so Sales Report. And it's going to include any formatting we put in regards to number, alignment, whether it has borders, whether it's shaded, and whether or not it's locked. We also are going to check font because we want it to include the font changes we made. Calibri 14. Next, we'll click OK. Now, if you go back to Cell Styles, I want you to notice under Custom at the top is the style you've created. Now, go ahead and click off of that. Let's click on Sheet 2. Now, let's say that we wanted to create a sales report for next year, for 2018. Let's go ahead and type just the text, Sales Report 2018. Press Enter. Now, we know because we've formatted this text before and we've changed the font size, we know that it's going to flow from A to B to C. So we're going to apply that custom cell style. Let's go ahead and select A1, B1, C1. Let's go to Cell Styles, find our custom cell style, click on it, and now we've applied that custom style. And if I compare my Sales Report 2018 heading from Sheet 2 to Sheet 1, I need to click off of that, I can see that those are the same. So using cell styles, creating those custom cell styles will save you time. If you decide that you no longer want a cell style, you can delete it. So let's go ahead and delete that style so you'll know how to do that. Go back to Cell Styles. Find your cell style. So the only style we've created is this sales report. Move your mouse to the sales report, right click, and then click on delete. And then it's gone. Now, any of the cells that you've applied that style to, the cell style is still there, but you now no longer have it in your library of cell styles. Let's go ahead and save this report and call it Cell Style. Go ahead and move to the Save button and click. We'll call this Cell Style. Click Save. And then you can close that. You can go to File and choose Close. And we are finished. Thank you very much for taking the class today to learn about charts, page setup and printing, and styles. You can close Excel, and then you can shut down your computer. Thank you.